So you're thinking of purchasing United Polaris tickets and you want to know if they are actually worth it. In this video, we're going to go ahead and break down everything that you get when you decide to purchase one of these tickets. We're going to look at the lounges, the plane experience, and just the overall quality of the service. Now, to give you an idea, I paid for these tickets out of my own pocket, which means I wasn't sponsored by anyone and I didn't redeem points in order to get them. And so that's the point of view that I'm going to be tackling this review in. To give you an idea, I already have a little bit of experience with business class because I've flown Qatar Airways business class in the past. And in my opinion, Qatar Airways is probably the highest in this category. So Polaris really has a tall order here, but let's go ahead and dissect and see if these tickets are actually worth it. Now, the flight that we took was a direct flight from San Francisco International Airport to Fiumicino Airport, aka Rome. To give you an idea, to purchase two United Premium Economy tickets, remember this is an international flight, Polaris is only offered on international flights, then the cost for the Premium Economy ticket is $3,180. Now that's just for one ticket, but I purchased two for me and my significant other, so the total came out to $6,360 for two Premium Economy tickets. Now, if you decide to instead go with Polaris, that's going to run you on an individual basis $4,558. Now, again, that is just one ticket. Now, I purchased two, so that came out to $9,116 for two United Polaris tickets. So the difference is $2,756. Now, on an individual basis, that is $1,378. Now, when you go online, most people will tell you to look at it from an hour perspective. How much are you actually spending per hour on the flight? And if you really break it down on an individual basis, if you were just paying for yourself and not another person, that would equate to about a $55 an hour difference. Now, what that means is if you decide to go forward with the United Polaris ticket, you are paying $55 an hour more on the flight than if you were just sitting in Premium Economy. Now, you're probably looking at these numbers and saying, well, that's a pretty cheap upgrade, and that is exactly what it is. It is an upgrade. We did not go and purchase the United Polaris tickets outright. They were actually quite expensive. They were at about $6,000 to $7,000 per ticket. So if I decided to go straight to Polaris, then the amount would have probably come out to about $13,000, maybe even $14,000. Now, it is important to note that Premium Economy on international is completely different than Premium Economy in the domestic environment. Premium Economy in international, you can kind of relate it to first class on domestic US flights, which in my opinion is actually pretty good. Now let's talk about some of the perks that you get when you decide to purchase these tickets. I'm only going to highlight the perks that I found more useful. There might be some other ones that I'm just not covering, so that's how we're going to tackle this review. Now, the first perk that you're going to get is you're going to get your own lane in order to be able to check in yourself and your bags. However, I didn't really find this all that helpful because at FCO and at SFO, the lines were pretty short. So yes, while it was a nice little perk, it didn't really save us that much time. Now, while we're on the topic of bags, you also get two bags that fly for free. In terms of time, though, you do get one perk, and that is that if you are in the front of the plane, you can deboard quicker and you can get through customs possibly quicker. So if you see that as a perk, that might be something to take into consideration. Those lines sometimes do get long, and if you can save just a little bit of extra time, it might be worth it. Now, whether you decide to purchase the tickets outright or you decide to upgrade, you automatically get access to the Polaris Lounge. Now, this isn't just any ordinary lounge. only individuals who have purchased United Polaris tickets are allowed to be in the lounge. So with that in mind, you might be saying, well, there can't be that many people, right? Well, you'd be wrong. We went to the lounge at about 1 to 2 p.m. and it was substantially crowded. Now, crowd aside, the lounge was, in my opinion, very well organized. It wasn't that difficult to get around. And the reason why it gave off that illusion of being crowded is because most people prefer to sit near the food, aka the buffet and the dine-in section. And that's actually where I'm going to go next. The buffet was okay. The food was nothing to scream about, but it also wasn't disgusting. It was edible, and it can definitely get you by, especially considering the price of food at an airport. I would argue that it was much better than airport food, so in that regard, it was pretty good. Now, when you go online and you research the Polaris Lounge, a lot of people recommend to sit at the dine-in restaurant. Unfortunately for me, I wasn't hungry enough to go and wait for access to this dine-in restaurant. And yes, I said that. You have to wait and sign up in order to be able to sit down at the restaurant. I really didn't have the patience, nor was I that hungry, so I can't comment on that section of the lounge. Now, the Polaris Lounge is divided into 2 floors. The first floor houses a substantial amount of room, but I really didn't see that many people sitting down here. I can see just from the seats that it can easily house about 50 to 70 people, but at most I only saw 5. So if you're looking to get away from the crowd, the first floor might be up your alley. In addition, this is where you will find the showers and the quote-unquote quiet rooms, and we'll talk about those in a second. Now, if you decide to take the escalator to the second floor, unsurprisingly, this is where you will find the bulk of the people. If you take a right, you will navigate over to the buffet and the dine-in restaurant, as well as the bar. And this section is where most people like to be, unsurprisingly, because all of the food is located right here. If you decide to take a left, then you will navigate to the meeting rooms as well as some additional seating so that you can enjoy your meals. However, if you keep going down, you will navigate to a little isolated area that houses a lot of snacks as well. In this little isolated area, you can find some gummies, some cookies, and some fruits. What I found really surprising about this second floor is that the bathrooms were actually pretty nice. If you look over here, you could see that they decorated the roof with these starry lights, and it really adds a nice little touch to this section of the lounge. And so now let's talk about the showers themselves. I decided to embark on this for this video, and so I went to the first floor straight through the doors and asked to take a shower. The nice lady will take your information. She will ask you for your flight number, for your name, and then she will guide you over to a room where you can take a shower. I found the shower pretty pleasant. The room was quite spacious and they give you a lot of space. The controls were a little funky, but it wasn't that hard to figure out. In addition, you also get an amenity kit that has slippers, a toothbrush, some deodorant, and more. Overall, I would say that the shower was great. It definitely gives you an opportunity to freshen up before embarking on a very long flight. And overall, the feeling was nice. The room was very well lit. It definitely gave you that comfortable vibe, and I have absolutely no complaints about this section of the lounge. The quiet rooms, however, was a different story. When I asked the first lady there if I can get access to a room, she told me that I couldn't because the person who manages it was not there. I found that a little weird, so then I came back a little while later and there was a new person there. I asked the same question and she said that yes, I could get access to it. I don't really know why the first lady would tell me that, but hey, that's what it is, right? Now, when I got access to the room, it actually was quite disappointing. She led me to a chair, she gave me some towels, and that's really all it is. It's just a room with a chair. I couldn't really figure out how to get it to work, and quite frankly, at this point, I was a little bit more annoyed, so I decided to just leave. Overall, I would say that the quiet room was quite disappointing, and I probably won't be going back there again. So, with all of this in mind, what would I give this lounge? Well, looking at it from all perspectives, the food, the service, the amenities that you get, I would give this lounge a 6 out of 10. Yes, the lounge is nice. It definitely gives you some time to freshen up. But really, I don't see myself either paying for this or getting a Polaris ticket just to get access to this lounge. Now let's talk about the plane experience. After all, that's the reason why you're sometimes paying thousands of dollars to fly in these seats. It's because you want them to be comfortable. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, the plane and the seat itself felt pretty cheap. It felt outdated, and it just wasn't up to par in my opinion. If I was paying full price for Polaris, I would be incredibly disappointed. And even though I didn't pay full price for Polaris, I was still disappointed. The seat was very clunky and it was dirty. Not only that, the controls were very finicky, and overall, it just didn't leave a good impression to me. Now, the plane itself was a Boeing 777-200ER, so it's a pretty substantially older plane. Now, if you're going to be using older planes, though, you probably should not be commanding $7,000 to $8,000 for a Polaris ticket, in my opinion. But looks aside, what was the actual seat like? It doesn't look good and the plane feels outdated, but was the seat any good? Well, needless to say, the seat was actually comfortable. It is a lie flat seat, so you can control the seat through this little sliding wheel here. And if you continuously hold it, it will at some point just convert to a lie flat seat. Now, I am 6 feet tall, so you can see that I still have just a little bit of room on top of my head here. Now, although the lie flat section was pretty nice, there are a couple of criticisms that I do want to offer. First, the little section where you put your feet, in my opinion, is just not large enough. You're going to have to put your feet on top of each other in order to feel comfortable on this lie flat seat. There is not a lot of space on this seat. Now, I found out that if you actually go with the odd numbered seats, you get a little bit more space. But in this situation, space was very limited. The amenity kits that they give you, you're going to have to get creative with where you stuff all of these things. The pillows, the 2 sheets that they give you, you're going to have to figure out where to stuff them. And it becomes kind of a game of Tetris to figure out where things are supposed to go. So if I had one thing to give back in terms of feedback for this seat, is I would ask that this section right here become an open and close section. I know in Qatar Airways that is available to you. You can open and close it and you could put stuff in there. I find that if they would do this, it would definitely free up quite a bit of space. Now, if you're going to be a side sleeper, I found that you will have to bend your knees a little bit in order to be able to fully fit in this seat. Not a complaint, however, there is enough room for that, but that is just something to think about. And one thing I wish that this seat did have is a sliding door. In Qatar Airways, you get the sliding door for a little bit more privacy if you want to change into pajamas or whatever. Here, you don't have access to that. Overall, I would say that the seat was comfortable and I was actually able to get about 4 to 5 hours of sleep. Now, seat aside, how was the service? More particularly, let's take a look at the food. And I have to say the same thing about the food that I said about the food in the Polaris Lounge. It was just okay. I had some beef with mashed potatoes, and I gotta say, it was all right. It wasn't anything to scream home about, but it definitely does get you by. When I asked my fiance the question of what she thought of the food, she had pretty much the same response. Now, for dessert, you get a choice of ice cream sundae, a cheese plate, and some other types of things that I can't remember. I decided to go with the ice cream sundae with fudge, and it was pretty good. But again, it's pretty hard to mess up ice cream, so I'm not really going to give too much credit for that, but it wasn't bad. Now, the breakfast, I have to say, was probably the most disappointing food that I've had on an airplane. The eggs just didn't smell right, and overall, it just gave you a very nasty taste in your mouth. I definitely was very disappointed here, and I didn't even finish the food because it really wasn't all that great. Now, food aside, what about the infotainment system or entertainment system? And I'm not going to lie to you guys, I really didn't watch too many things here because I'm really not the type of person to watch too many movies on a plane. But one thing that I do love to do on a plane is I love to bring up the interactive map. I like to see where we are, but as you can see here, it wasn't even working. No matter how many times I clicked, it just never worked. And that was incredibly infuriating because I wanted to see where we were, how much time we had left. I just couldn't do it. In Qatar, you actually get access to the cameras that show the actual footage as you're in the sky. Here, though, it didn't even work just for the simplest things. Now, the service on this flight was, in my opinion, pretty good. The flight attendants were very attentive and they were very quick to respond, and they were very lovely. I gotta give them props. They have a very hard job, but they definitely stuck to their guns here and they provided excellent service in my opinion. Now let's talk about the bathroom. I mean, it's a bloody bathroom, right? It can't be that exciting. And at least that's what I thought until I went into a Qatar Airways flight. In those flights, you actually get amenity kits in the bathroom. The bathroom is quite spacious. But in this flight, it's actually pretty cramped. There really isn't a lot here, and in my opinion, the bathroom is pretty disgusting. I gotta say that the amenity kits that they gave you were absolute trash. Now, I don't really cover the amenity kits here because in my opinion, it's a very niche thing. But they gave you a toothbrush, and the toothbrush had the bristles coming out of it, so there were some of them stuck in my mouth here. And again, this was just incredibly disappointing and just something that you really shouldn't have to worry about, but it was just an utter mess with the amenities there. Overall, the flight from SFO to FCO, I would give a rating of 6 out of 10. Now, the reason why it has a pretty low score is because of the food, the amenity kit, and the bathroom size. And not only that, the airplane just feels very cheap. It feels and looks very cheap. And the seats were just dirty and the controls were a little funky. But what really makes this score go up a little bit, in my opinion, were the flight attendants. They were definitely on top of their game. And I would love if I had flight attendants like that on every single flight. And so now let's talk about the return. When you fly from FCO to SFO, what do you get? Well, at SFO, you have the Polaris Lounge that you get access to. But FCO does not have a Polaris Lounge, so they contract it out. And one of the lounges that you get access to is called Prima Vista. And this lounge is substantially smaller than the Polaris Lounge at SFO. And when we arrived there, it was actually pretty cramped. Lucky enough, we did find 2 seats, but they were near the bathrooms. What can we do? Now, the food in this section was much better, in my opinion, than the one at SFO. They had a variety of foods that you can pick from, like pasta, ravioli, bread with tomato sauce, and they even had a dedicated section for coffee. Now, it isn't required, but you could leave a tip for the person making your espresso if you want. And again, all of this is included with the lounge. Now, there is a shower here as well, but I didn't really use it. And there are bathrooms, but the bathrooms are substantially smaller than the ones found at SFO. They were quite small. I would estimate that they had about 3 feet from wall to wall. And I'm showing you here just how cramped it is for someone like me. Now, one thing that I definitely did not like about this lounge is that they limit the Wi-Fi. And what I mean by that is there is a time limit on the Wi-Fi itself. It's about 3 hours. Now, again, that's probably not a big deal. You're not going to be there for that long, maybe. But at SFO, there is no time limit, and there actually is no time limit either for how long you can be in the lounge. But at Prima Vista, there is a time limit, and so I found that a little bit disappointing. And now let's talk about the flight from FCO to SFO. And this, in my opinion, is where everything starts to take a turn for the worst. Now, on the flight from SFO to FCO, we actually got offered some drinks before we took off. In this one, we didn't really get that. In addition, on the flight in the beginning, we got a menu, but on this one, we didn't get one. Why? I'm not really sure. Now, in this particular instance as well, the seat was uncomfortable. What I mean by that is, for some reason, I'm not really sure why, certain areas of the seat became much warmer than others. I don't know if it's because of the seat area itself, or maybe I picked a terrible seat, but I just didn't find this one as comfortable as the first one. Now, the food, again, the beginning and dessert food was okay, but the breakfast was absolutely disgusting. There was nothing good about that entire breakfast. They gave us a salad with absolutely no dressing. They gave you some butter, but no bread to put on it or anything. And they give you this cookie, which was absolutely disgusting. I didn't even finish it. I mean, how do you even mess up a cookie? Now, I don't want you guys to watch this video and say, well, this guy's a snob, right? Whatever. No, I like to go to the vendors, eat street food, so on and so forth. I'm not really all that picky with what I eat. I do cook all my own food, so maybe that's why I have a little bit of a different taste than most. But for the most part, I'm not really a picky eater. But this, I gotta say, was just nasty. There is no other way that I can put it. It was nasty, and I just could not wait to get either some water or wine to wash it down. And that's the next thing. I had a lot of very inconsistent service in this flight. I'll give you an example. At some point, the flight attendant came up to me and said, "Hey, would you like some water?" I said, "Sure." And then she went away and then never came back with it. I mean, I could have raised some hell about it, but I'm not really in that business. Now, upon all of this, I also found out that the seats that you select, whether it's odd or even, does matter a lot. I found that the odd numbered seats actually give you a little bit more privacy, and if you are with your partner, you can actually sleep side by side. If you are on an even side, then you only get this little sliding window here that goes up and down with the push of a button, and that's pretty much it. So, what would I give the flight from FCO to SFO? I didn't really get that much sleep, and most of my criticisms are still the same, except some of the things actually went worse. Overall, I would give this flight a 3 out of 10. If the flight attendants were as great as the ones in the first flight, it would probably go up to a 4 or a 5 out of 10, but it just wasn't there. So now comes the ultimate question. Is it actually worth it to purchase a Polaris ticket? And you're probably not going to like this answer, but I'm going to say it depends. If you are going to spend the full price of Polaris, which is sometimes $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, I would say absolutely not. Do not purchase those tickets. Instead, put it towards premium economy, and the money that you save, you can put towards a nice hotel. In my opinion, that would be money well spent. Now, if you're like me in a situation where you have the chance to upgrade to Polaris at a pretty reasonable rate, then I would probably say yes. You do get access to the lounges, which allow you to eat some food that you will not have to spend money for, unlike airport food. And you also get 2 checked bags. The service on the plane can be hit or miss, but ultimately, really what you're paying for is the lie flat seat. And if you can get your hands on an odd numbered seat for this particular plane, then it probably is 100% worth it. But ultimately, it is up to you to look at this review and see if all of this is actually worth the premium price. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned because next time we're going to go ahead and take a look at Delta. We're going to take a look at Delta One and see if it is actually worth it. Thank you guys so much, and take care.